Today I want to talk a little bit about different types of paint, watercolour paint. So pans, which is the little dry cakes of paint that you see there, and you can generally wet them with a wet brush, and then you can pick up enough paint. They come in these handy little tins, several different colours in a set, and more often than not the tins have got little mixing areas like this, which is quite a nice thing. And then you've got paint that comes in tubes, and it's wet paint generally, or loose paint, and you can squeeze that out into a palette. And this is like quite a large set there. But then over here you've got a full pan set. This is a half pan set, and you can see they're half the size of the pans in the palette there. And so I'll talk about the differences between the two, and you can work out which is best for you. Now I'm going to use paint from the same brand for this demonstration. They're all paints made by Paul Rubens, and so I've got their set of pans there, and this is a set of tubes, and lots of colours in there, probably more colours than you're ever really going to need. But good thing about buying sets like this is if you haven't quite worked out what your palette is or what your favourite colours are, you can buy a set like this, and they come with several colours. What we've got in here, we've got 24 pans, and like I said, probably more colours than you need, but you can work out what your favourites are, and when they run out you can replace them with fresh tubes or fresh pans. And so I'll do a couple of little demos today. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick demo on this 7x10. It's just a block of cotton paper, and I'll use the pans first, and I've just used sable brushes. I'll use the same brushes for each demonstration, and I'll just do a couple of quick landscape paintings just so you can see how the paint behaves. And so using pans, the paint is dry when you start, and then you can wet it, and they activate quite quickly. And so quite often all you really need to do is use a wet brush, and you should be able to pick up enough pigment. If they're particularly dry, you can give them a quick spray with a mist bottle a few minutes before you want to start painting. And I just picked up some blue, so I've got some French blue or French ultramarine, cobalt blue. I've got some magenta, and I've just mixed in a little bit of yellow into that as well. And so just bring across a very simple sky. And I've just picked up some sienna. I think they call it yellow sienna. It's kind of halfway in between raw sienna and burnt sienna from what I can tell, but quite a nice colour anyway. And so just bring that wash all the way down. And generally the difference for me between tubes and pans is tubes are very handy if you're working in a studio or like a home environment where you can squeeze out wet paint and then you can pick it up. But pans, I think, really come into their own if you're working outdoors or you're traveling. Say you're going on holiday and you've got all your pans and they're in a tin, all self-contained, and you can just fold that up and pop it into your bag or into your pocket even, and it's nice and compact and handy for traveling. So generally if I was traveling, I'd take a set of pans with me. Back to the painting, I've just mixed up a grey with just some blue and some what I already had in the palette there, and I put a bit of brown into it as well just to grey it off, and I've just brought a little bit of a cloud shape across into the sky, and I'll just touch that with a little bit of brown and just bring that cloud all the way over. Now I possibly should have sprayed these pans a few minutes before I wanted to start painting because they are a little bit dry. But I'm getting just about enough pigment out. And so just bring that sky all the way down to where I want the horizon. And I just picked up some of that sienna and a little bit of brown as well. And just touch that with a little bit of lemon yellow. And now I can bring a little bit of texture into the land. Now I'm just using a sable brush for this demo. Okay, I've dried that first wash and I'm just going to wet across the land a little bit, and I'll just add just a few little details just to give just a little bit of context to the painting. And so I just picked up some blue, it's cobalt blue, and some ultramarine as well. And I'll just very simply lay in some distance. And just bring that straight across pretty much in one go there. And now just pick up some more of the sienna, some more of the brown. I'll just touch that with a little bit of cadmium red, I think that is. And just bring some texture across the land there, just dry brush it in. And just so I leave some little textural bits behind. I'll just switch back to the larger brush, make it a little bit quicker, pick up a bit more paint. And I'll just give that a quick mist there with the spray bottle and just grab a little bit of everything I've got in the palette now. And like I said a little while ago, pans are dry when you start out painting, and I'm generally used to working with tube paint. So it's wet when you start working, so you can more often than not pick up more paint in one go. So I'm really having to scrub at the pans there just to get enough paint out. But it is working. And I'll just bring some dark across the foreground. And I'll just leave behind a few little lighter areas from the first wash. But now just pick up a smaller brush. It's a little rigger brush, and I just add a little bit of interest to that distance there. So just put a little church in on the horizon line. So it's quite nice to have a little bit of something going on in the distance, just for a bit of interest. Okay, I've just dried that second wash off now. So I'll just finish it off with a few hard edges just in the foreground. So I've picked up some more brown, some more ultramarine, and I've mixed that up very dark. And you can get quite black with that mixture. And so just put a few marks in the foreground, a few hard edges, and that will really help to push the distance back as well. And let's just connect the sky down into the land with a fence post, and just add like a little broken fence. And hopefully you can see just by adding those darks in the foreground there, that really pushes the distance back. But again, I'm really having to work to get the paint out with these pans. And like I said before, I probably should have given them a little bit of a spray with a mist bottle before I started, just to loosen them up, maybe give them a little bit of a spray and leave them for 5 or 10 minutes before painting, and it should make it easier to get the paint out. Now just touch a little bit of dark into that fence, and that really brings them right into the foreground. Now just a few little marks, and just close off that right hand side with a little bit of scrub, a few little bits of grass and bushes or whatever. Okay, I think that'll do for the first demo. Right, moving on now, I'm just going to use the pans. So I'm just going to squeeze some paint straight out into a little tray I've got there. And I've selected 5 different colours. And so I'll just squeeze some out, and I'll take the cap off, and you can see, just in case you don't know, paint is inside the tube and it's already sort of semi-wet. So I've just put some ultramarine, some cobalt blue. It's pretty much the same palette I used for the first demo. That's like a yellow ochre, I think that is, which is similar to a raw sienna, and a magenta and a burnt sienna. And so very similar colours to the first demonstration. And I'll just spray a little bit of water over the paper. I'm using the same 7x10, and I'll just draw in a quick horizon line as well, actually. And I'll do a snow scene this time, just to mix it up a little bit, do something a bit different. And I'll use the same sable brushes I used before. And I'll just grab some of that yellow, tone it down a touch with a little bit of the cobalt blue. And let's just go straight in with a sky. So you can see I've put that in, and that's actually quite thick, but if I touch that with some clean water, it instantly softens off. And straight away, going into the tubes, it's a lot easier to pick up more pigment, because the paint's semi-wet when you start. You can pick up a huge amount of paint really working with tubes. So I'll just grab some of the cobalt blue, a little bit of the magenta, and I've just mixed a purple type colour, and I'll just drag that into the sky, allow it to touch some of the wet areas as well. And I'll grab some of the ultramarine, mix that in. And so bring in a real sort of dark, heavy cloud. And I do prefer working with tubes personally, especially in the studio. The paint is just, it's always ready to go. And good quality tube paint will reactivate once it's dry, so you could squeeze it out and then use it the next day. Some cheaper paints will dry hard and won't reactivate very well, but artist quality paint generally should reactivate. I'll just bring a little bit of a smaller cloud, a little bit closer to the horizon. And just drop in a few little horizontal marks there. Just make it look like that cloud's going off into the distance. And it's running down into the previous wash as well, so hopefully that looks like it's either raining or just dumping some snow off into the distance. Okay, I've dried that first wash, and I've left white intentionally across the bottom there, so that should act as the snow. So I'll just give a little mist across the horizon, and I'll pick up some more cobalt blue, and just touch that with a little bit of magenta. And these tubes are quite nicely pigmented, quite strong, so I don't need to pick up much paint there. I mean, you can see I squeezed out about a pea-sized bit of paint from each, and I've hardly used it, but I've covered quite a lot of the paper already. And so I've put the distance in, and now I'm just going to drag some of that same colour just across the land and leaving the white behind as well. And so it's just getting some shadows on the snow. And so keeping it very simple. But we're going to add like a little bit of a line of trees just there in the foreground. So I'll just mix up some dark. And I've got burnt sienna and ultramarine, and that makes a lovely dark. Very strong. But I'll mix that up quite wet. And now just very quick brush strokes, so I get some broken lines and hard edges as well. Lay in just at the bottom of the trees there. And I want there to be a bit of a broken fence in the tree line as well. So more burnt sienna, more ultramarine. And now very quickly just bring out some trees. Do it all with the rigger, just use the side of the brush and the tip of the brush as well. And you can see the mixture of ultramarine and burnt sienna gives you a very nice dark. And so I can vary the mixture and go anywhere from black to grey. And now I'm not sure if you can tell by watching this, but the difference between the pans and the tubes really was just that the pans required quite a lot of scrubbing to get the paint up in the first place, but with the tubes it's essentially it's ready to go. And so that enables me to work a lot quicker. And so I just put that tree line across, and now I'm just going to put in a bit of a fence. And then I'll have a little bit of a gate as well, just on the edge of the field. So just bring the top of the gate across. Just a nice old-fashioned gate there. And I can put in the horizontals of the gate just with dry brush. And so keep it very loose as it's a snow scene. You can get away with quite a lot of broken lines. And now just continue the gate off to the right. Maybe there's a few little collapsed areas of little bits of fence post and little things like that. Maybe a little barbed wire fence that you can't see. I've just picked up some more cobalt blue and just mix that with some of what I've already got in the palette. And I'll just suggest some tracks going up to the gate. But doing this demonstration, testing out some new paints. I've never used the Paul Rubens paints before. I much prefer the tubes to the pans. And when they sent me the paint, they did ask me to mention that they've got an offer, Black Friday deal, where I think they're giving a percentage off. So if you want to check that out, there'll be a link down in the description of this video. Okay, I'll just continue that little track out there, and just a few little marks here and there, little broken edges. But making sure I leave behind quite a bit of the white of the paper. And just strengthen up some of the areas in that gate and the fence. Just get some really strong darks in there now. And I'm looking at it, I think I need some more dark in that little tree line as well. So mix up some very dark, quite thick paint. And that's extremely strong dark there. And I can lay that in straight over the top. And there's a little broken fence going on just behind those trees as well. And just strengthen the top of that gate. And just drop in a few more little dark marks. Let's bring those trees right up. Okay, now just a couple more finishing touches. I'll pick up some of that yellow. I always like to use a little bit of either the yellow ochre, raw sienna and burnt sienna in a snow scene. I can just soften that now with the rigger brush there with a little bit of clean water. And I'll just drop a bit of burnt sienna in there as well. Okay, with that I think that's the demo done. I'll just lay the two paintings side by side just so you can see what I've done there. And top one I've painted with the pans, and which worked quite well, but it did require quite a lot of scrubbing to get the paint out. But like I said, I probably should have sprayed them with some water first, and that does loosen the paint up quite a bit. So maybe that was my mistake. But anyway, pans are very handy if you want to travel. So I do like the fact that they come in these tins, and you've got your little palette and mixing area in there. Nice little self-contained paint box. But benefits of tubes is you can squeeze them straight out into a palette and they're essentially ready to go. No having to spray them before you start, and good quality paint will reactivate the next day. And so that's the two very simple little paintings I did using these Paul Rubens paints. Do check them out. Like I said, there's a link in the description where you can have a look, and I think they've got some discounts on at for Black Friday or something like that anyway. So do have a little look at that link and check them out. And so anyway, thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Cheers.